Miss Noble, how you doing today?
I'm blessed and highly favored. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, and thank you for agreeing to take time out your Sunday afternoon and sit down with me. Been looking forward to this interview for a week now. So thank you for being with us today.
I'm very excited about being with you. This is great.
Okay. Since you're a new guest on the show, I tell all my authors that I don't ask questions like, tell me a little bit about yourself. So, as a writer myself, I know, and as a journalist, when you ask the right question, people tend to tell you who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, but I want to do it in a different way.
Okay.
So my first question is to you to explain these five words for me.
Okay.
Uh, and why did you write them? Tempted, tried, troubled,
Mm-hmm.
transformed, and triumphant.
You got me there. Listen, this is God talking to me.
Mhm.
I'm a prayer warrior person, one on one with God type person. And one morning, I get up at 5 a.m., sometime 4:30, just to have time with the Lord. And so one morning, I was sitting on the side of the bed and I heard T5.
Mhm.
T to the fifth power. I said, what is that? And he said, tempted, tried, troubled, transformed, and triumphed in God's time. It was like, in a nutshell, who I am.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank,
That's
thank, thank,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you. That's powerful. That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I tell, one of the things, and being new on the show, one of the things I always tell people, this is not a book review show. I haven't read the book, but I look forward to reading. And I don't really believe in book reviews because everybody takes something different away from a good book. And
Right.
so my goal here on the author's eye is to get a look at being an author, being a writer from the writer's perspective. And that's what we're here to do today.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that you have we're going to focus on one book in particular today, but I understand that that book has a prequel and a sequel. Um so but the next question that I really want to get some understanding of, because this is one we do a lot of the research prior to our guests coming on the show, and this one, the research on this book was just awesome. It just had me like, wow. And
Mm-hmm.
and so we, I think my research assistant did a pretty good job uh
Mm.
doing background in it book. And of course, like I know you and am familiar with your work and all that you do in the community.
Mm-hmm.
We thank you for that. Want to talk about I want you to the name of the book is Benson's Bloodline to Freedom's Trail. I
Mm-hmm.
want you to tell me about all your feelings about, I think it's your great grandmother, Mary Ann. Tell me
Mary,
what.
listen, that is my ancestral grandmother and grandfather. And the story is true and it's phenomenal. And I was raised by their great great granddaughter. So a lot was poured into me. But it was not until I was given the slave owner's will that I was introduced to Benson and Mary Ann. The thing is, I knew that they were born free, Mary Ann and the children, while Benson remained enslaved until after the emancipation, because he was even scared to leave the plantation after that. However, what I didn't know was who Mary Ann was. And the great part about that is I am a genealogist as well. And I'm on Ancestry, and this woman sent me a message and said we're related. She was a white woman from Alabama. And she said, we're all from the Hallam's tree. And I said, lady, I don't really put a lot of stock in DNA. I had mine done. She said, you should. I had mine done in two different ways, and you came up in both. And I said, you have my attention. So she said, do you want to know who Mary Ann is? I said, I do. I said, she was free. She said, do you want to know why she was free? She said, that was the slave owner's brother's daughter. I went, are you kidding me? And they didn't hang Benson? She said, no. She said, and I want you to go to my tree and look at on my tree and see your family. And I did. And when I saw that, and when I saw Benson there with her, I said, the book has to be written. I've got all this information. There's no reason. The crazy thing is, this woman, I believe, was definitely in my path because this was January 2020. By January 2021, she was dead from COVID. So 1 full year of knowing this woman and letting her pour into me the history of Benson and Mary Ann and the bloodline is why I wrote the book.
That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about the family members who helped you write this book or who inspired you to write this book.
Mm-hmm. Well, my great grandmother, who raised me, whose father was Benson and Mary Ann's grandson, right?
Mhm.
Uh, it was her sister-in-law that was still living, and she was 90 something years old, and she died in 2015, gave me the slave owner's will. So she was the first real link for me to dive into this. Then there were other family members I met through her and through Ancestry. Wow, believe me, DNA works, right? And so people began to pop up. Those little leaves really do mean something. And I began to meet family members. I had one guiding force, and her name was Aunt Tiny. And Aunt Tiny was my great grandmother. Well, actually, it was Benson's granddaughter. And she was dead, but from a little girl, I remember her coming to spend the night with us, and she would sleep with me for some reason and pinch the heck out of me all night. However, it was her guidance. And I don't believe in ghosts too much, but a friend of mine said you really should allow Tiny to lead you. Everywhere I went, Mr. Bailey, she was on their wall. There was a picture of the same woman, the same picture on the wall. So I got to the oldest living family member at that time. And I said, why do you have Aunt Tiny on your wall? I never knew anything about you. She said, that's Mama Tiny. I said, what do you mean, Mama Tiny? I know her children. She said, yes, but my mother was her sister, and we believed in a village. And when my mother died, and she took me and my sister.
Mm-hmm.
This same woman, I went to the cemetery, and I'm being a genealogist. You find yourself in cemeteries and other places. And I went to the cemetery of the family where the old family is buried in Anderson County, and I heard this voice. And I didn't tell anybody else because I didn't want to think I was crazy. But I heard her say, come this way. And I followed that voice. And it took me to her husband's grave, her son's grave, and the sister of the woman I told you about who was named after her, Tiny Mae. Never found her grave. But at the same time, my son found Benson's son's, my great great grandfather, who was Benson's son, Benson and Mary Ann's son, found their wife, his wife's grave. It's some amazing stuff, you know. I mean, so trust me, there are legs in this story,
Mm-hmm.
legs that carry you through, legs with proof in the pudding.
That's that's so interesting. Wh- Tell me a little bit about, you call this, you say the book is historical fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about how you went about crafting, taking your real life genealogy and history and family and creating essentially a love story out of this.
Mm-hmm. A forbidden love story because what Mary Ann was white at the time, right? And Benson was enslaved. And well, it was forbidden because, of course, for that difference. Um, and he was warned many times. But there were a lot of people, honest to God, that I read through the will several times. I made myself so familiar with the passage about him, which is in the ninth clause, and I put the will in the second book. Uh, and I thought about him because he was told that he was the favorite. He was not, but that was what they told him. And so I didn't realize that, I suppose in the back of my mind, some of the other people that were in that will, I put in the book as characters. It is historical fiction because there was no way I could have known everything that went on.
Right.
There was no way I could have known. I knew that they loved each other and that they married. I knew that. I knew the children that they had, but I didn't know how they got away with it. So there was this one character, Mon Lucy, who I am absolutely in love with, and didn't know that she was part of the wheel until after the story was written. But it turns out that she was his um, surrogate mother, kind of, because when he was born, his mother was sold off. And as a baby, she raised him. Yeah. And so the way that they got away with things, however, is that um, he was trusted. That's why he thought he was special. And so they allowed him to use the buggy to go off and without worrying that he's going to run away. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He was a house slave. So he and mulatto, as they would call people that were mixed.
Mm-hmm.
I later found out from the woman that passed, Lynn Griffin is her name,
Mm-hmm.
that the slave owner was his father. So essentially, he married his first cousin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That
that's deep, huh?
that is deep. That's deep.
Wow, I tell you what, you should see Beyond the Lies. That's the sequel to it, and that brings it home, even to Juneteenth. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Tell me a little bit about growing up in Greenville. What was that like?
Oh, Jesus. Well, I grew up, as I said, under my great grandmother. Uh, you know, that term of "it takes a village" is not just cliche for me. So we lived in the type of family that if something was going on with your parent or parents, they couldn't take care of the younger ones. The older ones would take them and raise them. Now, so my mom was in the picture, but my mom and my dad had divorced, and my grandmother decided, well, let me just take care of Jerry. She did the same thing with my mother. That's a whole nother book that I'll talk about it another time. But just coming up there, when I lived with my great grandmother, I lived in the worst part of Greenville. It was a place. It was a middle class neighborhood, but it was rough,
Okay.
you know. And they called it Dodge City, right? So that was part of the time. On the other part of the time, my paternal grandfather was Dr. Reverend John Henry Smith, who was quite famous, and that we all went to his church. I was baptized in that church, and I lived part of the time with him to be with my father. My dad, my dad lost his eyesight in the Korean War, and he was also had post traumatic stress disorder, what at that time they call something else, shell shock, you know. So I wanted to spend time with my dad, and I loved my grandfather, and I mean the stories that he had and of the bloody war he talked about because he was born in 1889
Mhm.
and he was 99 when he died.
Wow. A lot of
And
history.
he a lot of history. And I've got pictures all in this office of him as a young man, and he was the first black man to get the Jefferson Award in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay.
And he built 5 churches, and He got his master's when he was 65 years old from Mars College. So, so I was between my big mama, that I called her, and I wrote my first book about her, Big Mama and Me. So um, I was with her part of the time, most of the time, because she was like the educator, and to make sure that you were the smartest kid in the block, and that kind of thing. There was discipline that I don't regret a day of. But on the other hand, my grandfather, he was that stable force, that historian that could take you back, and tell you about his grandfather, whom I have a picture of him, who was enslaved, but lived through being on in the Civil War with the guy that they called his master, uh, and they used him as a decoy. He lived to tell that story to his children, and he lived to get out and to help the other people. So my life in Greenville was full. Now, I attended the elementary school that was there, Washington, Broomtown Elementary School. And I was in high school, a senior in high school when immigration came along. So, I'm about 71. So
Okay.
I was back there when all of this was going on.
God bless you. God bless you. Uh,
Hmm.
that rich history, rich history, rich history. Um, I want to talk about you. Your road to becoming a writer was, from my understanding, through through your son, and your son helping out your son at
Yeah.
an event, who happens to be a songwriter. So tell me a little bit how that happened.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you this. I'm a minister, not a pulpit minister, but I'm a
Okay.
minister. And I was in prayer one day, and this was around 9/11. I had been to visit my son, Malcolm, in New York. That's where he lives. And there was a young lady that called, and I talked to her, and she sang to me. And I said, "Oh my God, I hope he records you." Little did I know that this would all play into my becoming a writer. So they had a show in Georgia that they were coming down to. So it was the Saturday before 9/11 that I got a word of prophecy, right?
Mhm.
And it came in the form of a poem. And it said, I have heard your tears. I have heard your prayers. I have seen your tears. I have read the message on the walls of your heart. You will live. You shall not die because death can't praise me from the grave. And he said, send it to Victoria. And I sent it to Victoria and another girl named Elizabeth. I did not know that she worked in the World Trade Center. She was to come down with my son to be in this program in Georgia. And so it happened that the day that the planes hit the Trade Center, she was on the 63rd floor of that first tower, and she came out. That's who ordained me.
Mhm. Mhm.
She walked out. Well, so my son was here, and he was like, "Mom, I don't have an act to replace her. Can you read some of your poetry?" And I said, "Boy, no. I don't get in front of crowds and read that crazy stuff. I had only written big. I had not even written a book. I had written poems about Big Mama, right?
Right.
I had written one called Nappy Head Cornrows, and
Okay.
I had written one called Peachtree Switches, and I thought, well, okay, I'll go down and do these things. Well, and when I came off the stage, and I don't know if I'm a comedian at heart, but before I started the poem about nappy head cornrows, I said, "Well, people, if you can't grow it, sow it, and if that don't do it, glue it." Right? And I mean, I'm knowing nothing about what I'm talking, and I went into the poem, and when I came off the stage, there were people at the gate saying, "Where's the book?" I said, "What book?" They said, "You need to write a book, honey. That is funny." And so that was the beginning of my writing to be published. Now,
Mhm.
I've always written
Right.
poetry either for people that were in the hospital. All I had to do was tell them a little bit about them,
Mhm.
or if someone died, they would say, "Can you put together a poem like that?" But to be a serious writer and to write novels and short stories came after that. And really, the first serious novel, and I tell you, it really plays into what I'm doing with these kids. I'm trying to do with these kids now. I know that writing is healing.
Mhm.
So my first novel was called Tin Can: The Slitting Edge, and it was based on a very bad first marriage,
Mhm.
and there was so much fear, so much fear. Fear is a demonic spirit, you know. And so, but anyway, after that marriage was over, I began to write. And I was at the University of South Carolina, which is where I retired from. I did 30 years in the Department of Psychology. And my mentor was Dr. Kwame Dawes.
Okay.
And at the time, I had got become saved, right? So some of the things that I wanted to put in the book was bad, curse words. And I was writing like Beetle Bailey would say a curse word, a Sarge. And so there were circles and swirls and stars. And he would say, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, that's what he called me." And he said, "No, no, no, Jerry. You're going to be a writer. You need to allow your characters to live. If you're going to tell a story to heal, you're going to have to let the sore bleed."
Mm.
And that meant that was so powerful to me. And trust me when I say it was like chains being lifted off of my shoulder. Um, this man died a month before the book was published. Not to say that that's a good thing, but I mean, I think that it had, I don't think it had, I think the book in itself was freeing. And I felt more free to look towards publishing it. So I tell writers all the time, write from your heart. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
You don't have to write technically all the time. It's good to write from your heart, from your soul. There's a difference in praying when you've written your prayer out and praying from your soul. See,
Right.
so it's the same thing. So that because of that, I started then thinking about writing to help other people. You know,
Mhm.
Big Mama was to make me laugh, and
Right.
some of the crazy things I did. So the first my first publicly, I mean, piece that was taken out of Big Mama was first published and by a man from Reader's Digest, and
Mhm.
that read the book, and he loved Hot Foot Jerry. So that was all about me being crazy back in the day, Superman and Spider Man. I mean, not even Spider Man wasn't born yet. Okay, so it was, yeah.
Okay. So
I
wow, that rich history again. A lot that you can share with other writers.
Yeah.
If you go on Amazon and Google Jerlean, um, I think 12 titles come back. Is
Cool.
that correct?
You have them on Amazon. Yeah, yeah. And they're still coming. They're still coming.
They
Yeah.
still wow, that
Listen, the
impressive.
Bible says write the vision, right?
Out of those 12 published works, what's your favorite one?
This one, Benson.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And Beyond the Lives of Freedom.
Okay.
Those two are my favorites. I did say Big Mama was,
Mhm.
but
You hadn't wrote this one yet.
hadn't written Vince. I didn't know him, but now I know him.
Mhm.
Um, it's just awesome to research and to find your family history, and I like to talk about that because we celebrate Black History in 1 month.
Mhm.
We live history every day.
Right.
Every day we live history. And so I encourage people to look into your own history. You'd be surprised who you'd find there.
Mhm.
You know, I had a friend, Miss Carrie Allen McCrae, who wrote Freedom's Child. And she's been celebrated by another writers group people. We were very close friends, and her sister, Miss Rosemary Jones. Miss Carrie died at 95. Her sister died at 104. And they were uh, people that taught me to look deep, to write, to live the characters that I write about. I found a letter in my research, and I love research. I found a letter that W.E.B. Du Bois had written their mother.
Mm.
Yeah. And so when you write, research your characters, become them. And that's what happened in, in why I call this historical fiction,
Mm-hmm.
because I lived the characters that I didn't know. Uh, and so and a lot of people told me they couldn't get into the dialect. I love dialect
Mm-hmm.
because you get to know who the person is. Every person has different personalities, just like your fingerprints, you know. And so
Right.
get into them, get to know them, like
Okay.
them, don't like them, you know.
Right. Now, out of those 12 published works, I think I saw a cookbook, a children's book, of several books of poetry, and
Yeah.
you just spoke of poetry. Um, do you have anything briefly you can share? Any piece of poetry you can share with us briefly?
I do. I want to share this one. I wrote it for, we always have programs. So we had a Black History program, and I wrote this one. It's called Origin.
Mhm.
Our origin is from descendants of kings and queens born at the sunbelt of humanity, who ruled over kingdoms that ascended into greatness, descended into the sea of time, only to arise again into the fullness of eternity, never to be forgotten. Perhaps it was the seed of greed sown by cave dwellers whose survival was to take, intimidate, ensnare through lies of trade for human cargo, chained and bound through cruel and inhuman, yet meant as a passage to sow further the seed of our royalty. Don't mess with God's inheritance, his intentions. We are still here, beautiful as ever. Enslavers mixed their seed in the wounds of our queens, not knowing they were blending the colors of the sunbelt to reflect the colors of God's palette, swirls of shades they could not paint, enhancing the mind of already brilliance that has made us a threat to be dealt with. You sought to bury us in fear, though the whip and fire seared our skins, our spirits could not be broken. The queens quilted directions, sang songs of destinations, and beat the drums, synced with the beat of our hearts to forge on. Rightfully, from the blend has come Presidents Obama and Harris, inventors, politicians, judges, lawyers, educators, innovators, doctors, producers, singers, dancers, people of insurmountable faith. You took nothing. We are still royalty. You cannot and will not decrease our heritage. I won't be stopped. I won't be chained and bound or enslaved nor subservient to no one who do nothing to do or who had nothing to do with my creation.
And what's the name of that?
It's called Origin.
Oh,
Oh,
that was powerful.
Origin.
That was powerful.
Thank
Wow. Um, where was Noble? And I forgot to mention, among those 12 works, you also, in addition to and according with, are the president and founder of Columbia's Writers Alliance, and that's where I first met you so many years ago.
you. Yeah, well,
Um, I would be remiss if I didn't say, Ax, tell me about that organization and why you founded it.
because I wanted to be around writers like myself. I wanted to find writers who were afraid to step out with their work to get published. And I was asked to join the South Carolina Writers Organization. But I was told by a good friend and who later became a board member, um, do your own thing,
Mm.
follow your vision. And so I opened the door for many writers who were afraid to write that first line. Every story begins with that first word and that first line, right? And it might not be the beginning of the book, it could be the ending, So, but I encourage them to go on, whether it's poetry, whether it's um, fiction, whether it's short stories or memoirs, whatever it is that God has given you to write about, if it's inspirational, whatever. Cooking. I love baking. So I have a cookbook because I wanted to share my heritage. I wanted to share what I learned from my mom and my great grandmother. So, I wanted to open the door. When God opens a door for me, I try to open a door for someone else. I now tell a lot of people that Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions." Well, I figure if there are many mansions, there are many doors. And for every door that opens, there is a greater blessing. So if there's a door open for me and that God is open, then certainly open for one who He's allowed me to be a leader for.
Wow, that's yeah. That and I definitely appreciate for you for what you do,
Hmm.
and the organization is much needed.
Yes.
And through that organization, you guys do a lot. And I know you put on a Black History program. I know
Yeah.
you have guest speakers.
Yeah.
Specifically, coming up, you have an event where you're reaching out to youth. Um,
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, with so much going on, gun violence, COVID, gosh, everything you can think of that looks like it may go wrong. I feel like these kids have something they need to write about. And again, I say writing is healing, right? And
Right.
so I thought about working with kids 9th through 12th graders. The 12th graders, because I want to see them go on with their education. And so my board and the core members of the Columbia Writers Alliance and I thought about doing a scholarship, doing an award-winning essay for scholarships um, on right to support healing, right to heal. They may know someone who has gone through uh, some hard times, or someone who had some friend or classmate that they may be able to help through their own writing, you know.
Mhm.
And so I'm kind of looking for that, but I also want to offer publishing opportunities to them. You know, that
Mhm.
is something, honey. When you see that box on your porch with your book in it, dare I say, right? you know, um, honestly, when you see that, that is like birthing
Mhm.
all of that you've written. And you're a journalist, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you
Right.
see that finished product, and when you know you've reached out to somebody through your writing, through what's in your heart, then you know you've done a great thing. And so I want to offer that to the kids. I want to thank the Richland County Sheriff Department for partnering with us to help us do this. And so they're giving us the August 12th and 13th,
Mhm.
which will be at their community at the Denny Terrace Community Center. That's
Okay.
where their training center is, but they've offered us the auditorium. So we're trying to raise money for back to school events and for these kids, and we also want to um, I thought maybe that first night, since we're not going to have the gala there, I will tell you about that. There are three events in this.
Mhm.
So the first one is we're calling it Your Best Sneakers and Jeans and Pearls. I don't know if you
Mhm.
can see that. Okay, back to school party, right? And we're going to have some entertainment. Maybe we can get the kids. I'm hoping they will come on for some early workshops with us.
Mhm.
Uh, get on stage and do some open mic, and that kind of thing. And then the second night, second day. So that night, I think it's from 5:30 to 9. Um, and the second day is from 9:30 in the morning. Well, I think 10. And that's when we're having the um, back to school supplies. So we're asking companies, oh God, sororities, fraternities, you know, or yourself, anybody to please pack a book bag, a backpack, pack a backpack, because we've had back to school events before. But then you've got people that will bring maybe a ream of paper, or some paper, some spiral binders, and some book bags. Well, of course, the book bags are going first. I
Right.
don't think it's fair that other kids only get some paper and a pencil.
Right.
So I'm asking everybody to pack a backpack, and hopefully I'll get some press out about this very soon. Uh, and then the third event will be at not the gala by JW, not the gala, the Gwen.
Mhm.
Have you heard of that place?
Yes, ma'am. I've been. Mhm.
Yes, beautiful in there, right?
Right.
This is for the scholarship funding. So it's $100 a plate. I know people say that's a lot, but if your heart is in the right place, and if you know you're trying to help a kid go further, you know, then
Mhm.
that's where that money is going, to those kids that write the essay and that win. We will have some people there. Maybe you'll be on the panel, hopefully. But and those kids that win, we want to be able to give them a good scholarship to take them off to college. So that's what that is. And again, the sheriff's department has been so wonderful. You never know who you're gonna meet. I was at the Mad Hatter's party that they had downtown, and I was selling my books. And this young lady came up to me, and she was reading. I mean, she was showing me her work and looking at my books. And she said, "Would you like to come and be a guest author at a program I'm having?" I said, "Sure, of course I will." Well, I didn't know she was a deputy.
Mhm.
And so when she reached out to me, uh, the spirit in me said, "Give her a flyer." Right. And I said, "Do you think the sheriff department will partner with us to help these kids?" She said, "I don't know. Let me take this and send it out." Sheriff Lott sent me a email back and said yes.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
we want to do great things for these kids. My heart goes out to children, especially those kids that fall between the cracks.
Mhm.
Years ago we worked with the homeless shelters, and I worked as graphic designer and administrative assistant in psychology. And many times when I would do posters, I would trim them and take what was left over to the homeless shelter and get the kids to draw pictures and write stories about what they've drawn. Sometimes they can't talk about things, but they can
Right.
write about them, you know,
Right.
and that frees them. It takes them on a journey, you know. And so I want the same thing for these kids that I think may be holding a lot in. I have a young lady in my writers group whose son was killed through gun violence. He's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He wasn't a part of a gang or anything. He just went to a party and was in the wrong place. He was shot in the back 3 times. He has sisters and brothers that are in high school. Those are kind of people I hope.
Right.
Well, can I come? Can I just write a poem about this? We're going to get them published.
Mhm.
We don't want a dime from them, but I'm asking the public to help, you know, reach out.
Thank you. And like I said, I appreciate what you do in the community. So, like I said, if we can be of any assistance, just let us know. We'd be more than happy to get the word out. Um, Ms. Noble, I want to thank you for taking time out your busy schedule.
Yeah.
just sit down and talk with me today. And like I said, I just wanted to use this platform to have a conversation with authors because, like you've shared with me so much rich history,
Mm,
so many things that you've experienced, and you shared your experience in a book, and you share that experience and knowledge through the Writers Alliance. And I there are a lot of writers out here now that are looking for people to just like you said to run bounce some ideas off of. Kind of what's the first step? What's the second step? And so you were definitely a person we wanted to talk to,
yeah.
and thank you for sharing that information with us.
Mm-hmm.
Before I let you go, what advice would you give an author who's written the first book and is looking to market and promote and looking for that what next?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, uh, you keep writing. That's what's next because you don't know if that next book is the one that's going to take you to the top. Uh, I would like to encourage you to do that, but but you need to know how to market. Let me tell you something. Kindle KDP Publishing will instantly put you on Amazon and get you a Kindle book out there where people can get you on their laptops and on their iPads. That's a form of marketing. A lot of people are against that, because they're thinking about the dollars. You got to think past the bag that you're in. Okay? Go to that next door that's open and keep writing. Join organizations, uh, get into book signers, go to like events that allow you to have book signing. Get your name out there. You know, when you knew me earlier, and when we had this huge organization then, and they had the South Carolina Book Festival, I
Mhm.
think we had maybe the biggest thing there. And there were people that would tell me, well, why don't you just get a booth like Barnes and Noble and just stack all the author books in there and you all. I want everybody to know who the author is.
Mhm.
Your work represents you. What you write represents you. Okay? And how you write it and how it reaches out to that person that's reading it. Will your reader read the back of the book first? You know, will
Right.
they want to go inside? You know what I'm saying? So and if you always have somebody read back to you, that's part of editing. So you got to self edit. Sometimes editors can be really expensive, and that's another thing that I look to help writers who get caught up by people that rip them off,
Mhm.
literally just for nothing. I mean, they promise to get your book out, but they charge you up to $2,000 or $3,000. That's crazy. And so I always show them a better way. And on our website, we have some publishing companies, some print to well, anyway, go on there and or call me or email me. I'll be glad to lead you in the right direction. Not every writer, author stays with me. That's good. Get what you come for. I'm
Mhm.
going to be here.
All right, Miss Noble. Uh, Once again, thank you for taking time to sit down with me today.
I hope I've done a great job for you.
You have. You
Mhm.
have. Take care.
Take care. God bless.